Can you believe it's almost been 10 years since Iron Man kicked off the MCU? Since then, we've gotten a lot from Marvel. Toys, TV shows, a revived interest in comics, but not many movie-based games. Not counting mobile games and Lego Avengers, there's only ever been 5 console games based off the MCU. From what I can tell, these games made by Sega are not that good, and I'm sure there's plenty of reviews talking about like why the games don't work, why the gameplay's bad. And that's all great, but what I want to know is, are they just like the movies? The games we are talking about today are Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor God of Thunder, and Captain America Super Soldier. I'm going to rate the games on how close they follow the film's story and if it captures the look and feel of the films. Some of the games act as prequels, sequels, or interquels, in which case, I'll see if they fit the continuity of the overall series. All of these games are based off the films in Phase 1. Is it fair to punish them for not fitting in with the continuity that was established in later films? No. Am I gonna do it anyway because I'm an asshole? Yeah. First up is Iron Man. Much like the movie, the game begins with you in the Mark I Iron Man suit. You leave the cave and wipe out most of the terrorists. Yinsen lives a little bit longer in this version though. In the film, he was dead before Stark left the cave. Here, he kind of walks him through using the suit. Still ends up dead though, so I guess it works. Iron Man actually fights Raza in a tank and seemingly kills him, which is different from him getting killed by Obadiah Stane later in the film. Tony's motivations are similar to the movies. He feels guilty about his weapons being used for evil and wants to stop criminal organizations from using them. In the film, he only went after the 10 rings, but the game adds a few evil organizations to the list. A lot of early missions are him fighting the Maggia, who were nowhere to be seen in the movie. Iron Man fights the Marcus Scarlotti version of Whiplash. Marcus Scarlotti did end up in the MCU on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. later, but looked and acted nothing like this. Madame Mask is also in the Maggia in this game, even though the show Agent Carter would establish she existed in the 40s and should probably be dead by the time this game takes place. Fun to mention that during these fights, Iron Man talks about having a date with Miss Romanoff and a lunch with Danny Rand. That's kind of odd, seeing how he doesn't meet Miss Romanoff until Iron Man 2, and Danny Rand is both a child and presumed dead, and actually in a mystical land in another dimension at this point. After Iron Man takes down the Maggia, he has to take on AIM, who shows up a few movies early, I guess, along with some other comic villains who weren't in the movie. After hopping all over the globe, you finally relive the fight with Ironmonger from the film. In the film, Tony had to figure out how to position Ironmonger above the arc reactor so he can blast him with energy and short out his suit. It was pretty clever. In the game, you just shoot him a bunch.
Stane's suit is in critical condition, sir. He cannot draw power safely from his power core.
It doesn't have the same charm to it. The story differs, but still gets the same idea across. The game does an okay job of making you feel like Iron Man. His suit moves and acts like it did in the film, and you get the weapons from the movie too. The game even has the same order of suits Tony did in the movie, which is a nice touch. They were able to get back some of the cast to do voices, and did a pretty good job of finding voices for Pepper and Stane. Jarvis sounds awful though.
You know, Jarvis, by all rights, I should be dead.
Yes, sir.
I've been given a second chance, and look, I'm using it to kick some ass.
Do not understand ass-kicking reference, sir.
Remind me to give you some kind of personality, Jarvis.
The only other big change I can think of is the lack of Happy Hogan. He isn't anywhere to be seen in this game. Iron Man 1 took some liberties and broke some continuity, but you know what? It's close enough. Iron Man 1 is just like the movie. Now on to Incredible Hulk. Ah yes, The Incredible Hulk, the forgotten Marvel film that people sometimes forget is part of the universe. Well, here is a game that also forgets what happens in that movie. It opens up with a deleted scene from the film where Bruce Banner tries to kill himself and fails. The game then moves you right to NYC, something that didn't happen until way later in the movie. The game just goes off the rails when it comes to being an adaptation of the movie. Hulk meets Rick Jones, who's actually never been introduced in the MCU. They team up to take down the Enclave, a group of evil scientists that have mutants and robot armies at their disposal. In addition to that, Hulk has to fight the UFOs, an evil Fantastic Four type team consisting of a Metal Man, a girl made of vapor, an X-ray dude, and a telekinetic guy. When did any of this happen in the movie? What does this have to do with anything? It doesn't even fit into the idea of Banner trying to keep the Hulk from being used by evil forces. They're just assholes destroying the city who keep bumping into the Hulk. Banner meets up with Samuel Stearns way earlier in the story and does some odd jobs for him, but all with the promise of a cure for the Hulk. The military shows up rocking Hulkbuster armors years before Tony Stark thinks of it. Talbot even shows up in some armor and tries to take the Hulk on. He eventually dies in battle. So, forget all those seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where he's alive and well. Eventually the game finally has Banner meet Betty, and the fight at the university plays out kinda the same. The scene where Banner tries to cure the Hulk in the fight with Abomination is kinda similar to the film too. The game ends much like the film minus the cliffhanger. So the story's a mess, but the game does a decent job of feeling like the Hulk. You even get makeshift boxing gloves like the kind he got in the film. The biggest difference this Hulk has with the film is that he's talking in full sentences way earlier than he should.
Hulk, strongest one there is!
The game also has most of the cast from the film coming back. None of this gives it a pass though. This game took way too many detours when it comes to the story. So The Incredible Hulk is not like the movie. Now let's move on to the game based off the worst Iron Man sequel, Iron Man 2. So this game acts as a kind of sequel to Iron Man 2. Tony and Rhodey face off against the evil Roxxon Corporation, who is attempting to hijack Jarvis's AI. Okay, the Roxxon company's been involved in some shady shit in the MCU, but getting in airships and bombing buildings, that's gotta get them shut down, right? I don't think Exxon can get away with nuking random countries. One thing that's odd is Tony wears his Under Armour when not in the Iron Man suit. It's odd because he totally ditched that by the time Iron Man 2 came around and it hasn't been seen since. You face off against the Crimson Dynamo in this game, which is also odd because Crimson Dynamo's character was merged with Whiplash in Iron Man 2. Also, AIM shows up early once again. We even get to see the helicarrier equipped with jets instead of turbines, which breaks continuity with the Avengers and the Winter Soldier. Tony and Rhodey team up with Nick Fury and Black Widow for some missions, which kinda makes this feel like the Avengers initiative, even though it seemed like Tony didn't talk to Nick Fury between Iron Man 2 and the Avengers in the films. Eventually, the corrupted Jarvis AI turns a guy into Ultimo and he becomes an evil robot that wants to destroy the world or something. It's kinda similar to Age of Ultron. Eventually, they crash the ship into the robot and Iron Man blows some shit up or whatever. I have no idea. This game's story is a mess. They couldn't even get most of the cast to do voices for it. Only Sam Jackson and Don Cheadle returned for the game. Here's another thing the game has in common with the movies. Remember when they swapped out Terrence Howard for Don Cheadle? This game does something similar. It swaps out Don Cheadle occasionally for Phil Lamar. It's just as seamless.
He controls the Tesla energy program for the Russian military.
Please tell me Ultimo won't regrow these things.
Anyway, Iron Man 2 is not like the movie. Let's move on to Thor God of Thunder. Thor God of Thunder is a prequel that has Thor going on a fun journey through the 9 realms. Or worlds, as this game calls them. Really? No one could check that? In the film, Asgard is invaded by a handful of frost giants and are quickly killed by the Destroyer. Odin sees it as an act of a few individuals not representing all frost giants and dismisses the idea of war. Reasonable enough, but in this game, they do a full-on invasion. Odin still wishes not to go to war. Dude, you're in a fucking war right now! Fucking Sif is dead! She gets better, but right now she's dead! Go to war, Odin! So much like the movie, Loki manipulates Thor into going to another world and wrecking people's shit. Thor accidentally releases Mangog from his tomb and realizes he fucked up. Loki transports him to Vanaheim, where Loki promises a troll that he will fix his Bifrost if he keeps Thor distracted. Loki wants to prove himself worthy while Odin is in his Odin sleep. You know, for a prequel, this story is starting to follow the story from the first movie. Does Thor ever learn his lessons? So Loki fucks up and can't stop Mangog. He sends Thor on a mission to get Scape right, which can defeat Mangog. On the way, Thor kills Surtur, so guess Ragnarok isn't happening anymore. Good news for Asgard! One thing that's interesting is that Odin created Mangog as a weapon, kinda hinting at his darker past that was revealed in Thor Ragnarok. I even like the way that this Mangog looks similar to the Destroyer from the first Thor film. Anyway, Loki and Thor team up and take him down, and I guess they live happily ever after until the first Thor movie happens. The game gives you all of Thor's powers, but the way it plays out, it feels more like Kratos, God of War, and less like Thor, God of Thunder. The characters and the settings all look pretty good. It's stuff that you would probably see in a Thor movie. But that continuity break with Surtur and Odin not taking the invasion seriously ruins it. Thor God of War is not like the movie. So this game acts as an interquel, taking place, I guess, during the montage from the first film. It has Captain America trying to stop Zola from using his blood to make stronger super soldiers. The look and feel of the game is great. Captain America moves and fights how you would expect him to, and it makes good use of his shield. His gymnastics translate well to the game too. During his mission, Cap ends up fighting Von Strucker, who happens to be alive decades before he should be. Who knows, maybe it's a great-grandfather. While we're at it, notes you find from Baron Zemo might be the character from Civil War's ancestor too. I'm willing to go along with that idea. Then Madam Hydra shows up. While she's probably closer to her comic counterpart, she is nothing like the MCU version. In Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Madam Hydra is AI created by an android. She exists inside the Framework, which is a virtual reality world where Hydra rules and they experiment with Inhumans. She then uses those powers and transfers them back into the real world in a cloned body. Did you follow that? Good, now forget it, because the chick in this game is nothing like that. Eventually, Zola reveals an early prototype for his mechanical suit. The design for this suit was in the first Avengers, so theoretically he could have experimented with it, but it ends up looking nothing like the machine Zola that we would see in the Winter Soldier. Also, he built a giant robot. Weird Captain America never mentions that in the movie. Captain America Super Soldier is close, but ultimately not like the movie. Well, we did it. We made it through the series. Maybe it's a good thing they stopped making these games. These days, Marvel is more focused on their mobile games and their Lego Avengers and Lego Marvel stuff. We are seeing a return to console games, though. This year, we're going to get the new Spider-Man on PS4. So maybe, somewhere down the line, we can once again get movie-based games that will feel like and hopefully follow the films. Until that time, we're stuck with the Sega games, which ultimately are not like the movies.